Welcome to the Aboriginal channel. On this episode, we're going to critique a video of some people at a news station put together a video of some information about the Devil's Punch Bowl in Mississippi. So I'll play the whole video. It's about 3 minutes and 6 seconds long. And then I'll start it from the beginning and then critique different parts that I pause on.
This is WJTV News Channel 12. That's it.
Concentration camps. People mostly associate the term with Nazi Germany, but historians say it's true. They also existed in America. During the Civil War, authorities in Natchez, Mississippi forced tens of thousands of freed slaves into camps built in what's known as the Devil's Punch Bowl. Jacob Kittelstad explores this forgotten history this Mystery Monday.
Untouched fruit falls to the ground near the banks of the Mississippi River.
They talk about there's the most beautiful wild peach groves down in the Punch Bowl.
And researcher Paula Westbrook says, like a peach, the area known as the Devil's Punch Bowl has a pit, a mass grave from the 1860s. Historians estimate that in 1 year, up to 20,000 freed slaves died in contraband camps below these bluffs.
When the slaves were released from the plantations during the occupation, they overran Natchez, and the population went from about 10,000 to 120,000 overnight.
So they decided to build an encampment for them at Devil's Punch Bowl, which they walled off and wouldn't let them out.
Don Estes is the former director of the Natchez City Cemetery.
I just put my own tombstone right there. You see Estes?
Learning history's been his life. He says Union troops ordered recaptured black men to perform hard labor.
Straight down right here.
While women and children were all but left to die in the 3 Punch Bowl prisons.
Disease broke out among them, smallpox being the main one, and thousands died. They were begging to get out. Turn me loose and I'll go home back to the plantation, anywhere but there. But they wouldn't let them out.
The Union Army did not allow them to remove the bodies from the camp. They just gave them shovels and said bury them where they drop.
And I'd really like to show you more of this terrain, but it's just too thick with greenery. These bluffs are also straight down, so not only is it dangerous to navigate, it's still very mysterious back there.
It's a bed of alligators and snakes. It would take Indiana Jones to get back in there at this point.
Then you come on up washing away bluffs, and at the Devil's Punch Bowl that has so many people that no one knows how they got killed or when, and they're still down there wasted.
And even to this day, they talk about wild peach trees that come up down there, but no one in Natchez will eat them because they know what the fertilizer was.
Exploring the unexplained on Mystery Monday, Jacob Kittelstad, WJTV News Channel 12.
And historians say even now, people might discover old skeletal remains after flooding on the Mississippi. But being on the Natchez Trace, sometimes it's difficult to tell which century those bones are from.
Now I'll go back through it and do a critique. So right off the bat, you see the replica in the background.
TV News Channel 12. That's it.
Concentration camps. People mostly associate the term with Nazi Germany, but historians say it's true. They also existed in America. During the Civil War, authorities in Natchez, Mississippi forced tens of thousands of freed slaves into camps built in what's known as the Devil's Punch Bowl. Jacob.
Now, she said that concentration camps existed in America. That means they were all over the place. And after she said that, she went on to say the Civil War is when they forced so-called free slaves, but we know they were Indians, into concentration camps. Those concentration camps were what Indians built themselves to protect themselves from outside interference. And she said they forced tens of thousands in concentration camps. Remember the numbers, because there's going to be some conflicting numbers inside of this video that we critique a little bit later on.
Kittelstad explores this forgotten history this Mystery Monday.
Untouched fruit falls to the ground near the banks of the Mississippi River.
They talk about there's the most beautiful wild peach groves down in the Punch Bowl.
And researcher Paula Westbrook says, like a peach, the area known as the Devil's Punch Bowl has a pit, A mass grave from the 1860s. Historians estimate that in 1 year, up to 20,000 freed slaves died in contraband camps below these bluffs.
Now, notice he said 20,000 people died down in the camps.
Below these bluffs.
When the slaves were released from the plantations during the occupation, they overran Natchez. And the population went from about 10,000 to 120,000 overnight.
So she said that the population in Natchez went from 10,000 to 120,000 overnight. The conflict in that is that they're saying that there were 20,000 so-called free slaves who died in the Devil's Punch Bowl. So my question is, while they were being held behind the so-called walls in the Devil's Punch Bowl, the 20,000, what was the other 100,000 doing?
So they decided to build an encampment for them at Devil's Punch Bowl, which they walled off and wouldn't let them out.
Don Estes is the former director of the Natchez City Cemetery.
I just put my own tombstone right there. You see Estes?
Learning history's been his life. He says Union troops ordered recaptured black men to perform hard labor.
Straight down right here.
While women and children were all but left to die in the 3 punch bowl prisons.
So now I just said that they took the men to make them do hard labor and left the women and children in the Devil's Punch Bowl. So that's another piece to the puzzle that people don't talk about. You can go on YouTube and find a million videos on the Devil's Punch Bowl with people talking about it, but what they're saying is not following the details.
Disease broke out among them, smallpox being the main one, and thousands died. They were begging to get out.
Notice that he said they got diseases, smallpox being the main one, and they basically died down there in the Punch Bowl. That's what he just said. Later on, he'll say something that's in direct contradiction of what he said right here.
Plantation anywhere but there, but they wouldn't let them out.
The Union Army did not allow them to remove the bodies from the camp. They just gave them shovels and said, bury them where they drop.
And I'd really like to show you more.
Now, earlier in the video, she said there was a wild grove of peaches down there. Just now, she said that they buried them with shovels right where they laid at. So after that, they planted peach trees on top of them to keep them covered up. And they planted, as you look right here on the screen, those are grapes. That's a big bushel of grapes right there. So they got a bunch of fruit growing on top of them. That's symbology because the Indians were the people of the garden, people of the fruit.
This terrain, but it's just too thick with greenery. These bluffs are also straight down, so not only is it dangerous to navigate, it's still very mysterious back there.
It's a bed of alligators and snakes. It would take Indiana Jones to get back in there at this point.
Then you come on up washing away bluffs, and at the Devil's Punch Bowl that has so many people that no one knows how they got killed or when, and they're still down there wasted.
And even to the
Now, he said nobody knows how they got killed or when, but he earlier said that they died from smallpox and disease, and that the federal troops took the men to do hard labor and left the women and children in the camp to die. But yet, right here at the end, he says nobody knows how they died or when. So that lets you know right there there's a bunch of things about this that's twisted.
this day, they talk about wild peach trees that come up down there, but no one in Natchez will eat them because they know what the fertilizer was.
Exploring the unexplained on Mystery Monday, Jacob Kittelstad, WJTV News Channel 12.
And historians say even now people might discover old skeletal remains after flooding on the Mississippi. But being on the Natchez Trace, sometimes it's difficult to tell which century those bones are from.
So she just said right there that people might find skeletal remains, but being it was on the Natchez Trace, you never know what century they're from. So that basically sums up the whole purpose for making that little video right there, was to tell the people when they find bones that they were from the freed slaves that were buried in the Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez. So the whole purpose was to keep the lie maintained. And they doing that all over the country. What I mean by they're doing it all over the country is that they're maintaining the lie in many different instances all over the country. For an example, in Seattle, they have the underground city. That's definitely a cover up in the form of a tourist attraction that they're benefiting from. Then you also have what was called the African American Burial Monument in New York, and another instance where they said a hurricane killed the majority of 2,500 so-called African Americans, to which they put them in a mass grave. So they believe in putting so-called Indians, so-called blacks in mass graves and just forgetting about them, planting trees and bushes on top of them and just letting it be what it is and going on with their life. If it was anybody else of any other culture or nationality, it would be a big event. They would definitely not leave it how it is, but because they're the perpetrators of it, they definitely left it how it is. At this point, we're going to go over and look and see if the Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi was actually an Indian mound village. The Devil's Punch Bowl is between Mississippi River and this national cemetery right here. And as we look, we can see that the cemetery, with all these different levels of raised earth or raised ground, it was actually a mound village before it was transformed into the Natchez National Cemetery. But if we go look at mound sites in Mississippi, we can see that the Emerald Mound and the Grand Village mounds are right here in Natchez in Adams County, Mississippi. Also, if you look at a map of Indian mounds, you see the Emerald Mounds, Marksville Mound, all these mounds in the area of Natchez. And when we look on this Civil War's battles map at the state of Mississippi, you see that Adams County is not marked with battles because it was more like a massacre that occurred there, but it is surrounded by battles. Now, if you reference this map and where these battles in the state of Mississippi took place at with the Indian Mounds map, you can see that up in the northeast corner of Mississippi, there was Bears Creek Mound, Far Mounds, Owl Creek Mounds, and Bynum Mounds, all in this area where the Civil War battles took place at. Also in Vicksburg, where we see the Pocahontas Mound. So Natchez has what was called the Grand Village Mounds. So basically, this further proves that the people that were killed at the Devil's Punch Bowl were Natchez Indians, perhaps other Indians of Mississippi. If you trace your ancestry back to the state of Mississippi, the Devil's Punch Bowl is one of the places that has a significant meaning, definitely to those with ancestry from Mississippi and Louisiana. Because you got to think about it. If all these other battles are Indians being invaded by federal troops, then Natchez, or the Devil's Punch Bowl at Natchez, was considered a safe zone because the federal troops hadn't got there yet. And the Devil's Punch Bowl was sort of like made like a cliff, so it was well fortified. However, never believed that they were just walled off and they died from starvation because they were up against the Mississippi River. They could kill alligators and fish for food. We're going to be looking at the 1928 Okeechobee hurricane in Florida, the mass burial site, where they have a mass burial site. And here we're looking at a street view of it, where right here on this side, this field, you can see where it's on an elevation. If you look across the street at this building to the right, you can see that it goes down a ways. So the other side of the street is low or level or flat. And then when you get over here to the left, this field with these trees planted on it, is the whole area is on an elevation. And this is the hurricane of 1928 mass burial site in Palm Beach County, Florida. Now, if you look back here where the cursor is moving at, back here, you can see that the land or the ground is elevated even higher back here. So there's like a complex. If you look down this way, you see coming off the road how the land goes up high. See how it goes up right here? And then it levels out. And then right here it goes up again. Right here where the cursor is at. Then it goes down. So this is a mound complex in Florida where they have a mass burial of so-called African Americans at. Right now, I'm going to look at this location of this mass burial site and compare it to the one at Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi, and also to the one of 2006 in New York City. Now, we're looking at the hurricane of 1928, the mass burial site in Florida, Palm Beach County, and you can see where it's by water, right? Remember, mounds would be up against water, so that's the Florida one. This is the African Burial Ground National Monument in Brooklyn or in New York. See how it's by water? And you have the Natchez National Cemetery, which I showed was previously an Indian mound complex, but you see that it's by the water. I don't believe that's a coincidence at all. Now, on a side note, this is an article of the Natchez National Cemetery, and in this picture, you can see that it's on an elevation, right? It's slanted. It says the Natchez National Cemetery is close to the Mississippi River. And in 1866, this piece of land was purchased to give the proper burial to the soldiers of the Civil War. 1866, remember that date. That's when they got control of the land. This is what the monument in New York looks like, and they have a heart symbolized on it, which is American Indian symbology. This is a 1928 Palm Beach County hurricane victims honored and memorial right here. And as you can see, this thing right here is American Indian symbology. As we can see right here, this Fremont style warrior, it's ancient art from cave drawings, says Aboriginal art. So you see this symbology right here. I believe it means the sun. We look right here of Native American or American Indian sun symbols, and right here in this sun it has that same symbol, as you can see. So we just went over some symbology and 3 locations where presumably are mass graves of Indians disguised as Africans, and the significance behind placing so-called black folks into mounds in basically the last 3 centuries with other aboriginals from thousands of years ago. If they're ever dug up, they're going to say that they all come from the last 3 centuries and they're of this so-called African American slave stock. So you got to know how it's going to come at you when it comes ahead of time. And that's the trick. Although there is a way to do the dating on it. Just too bad that the people that's digging it up, processing it, are also those who are doing the dating of it and giving the report to the people. So everything is coerced through the history books, which has all been a lie. So therefore, if it's a lie, then what's the truth? If it's a lie, then